This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hi, my name is Dan Hoffman, and this is my Horde Notions deck. So, Horde Notions, one of each color, legendary elemental, 5/5, vigilance, trample, haste. Then you can pay one of each color, and you can have you can cast target elemental card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. So this guy just gives me access to all 5 colors. The original deck was a Mimeoplasm shell, so it's mainly a bug deck that splashes white and red for some effects. So the idea that the old deck used to be a combo deck and running a Life from the Loam land shell. So I love the lands part of it, but I hated the combo. The combo painted a target on my back, and I really didn't like the way it was poised in the metagame. I didn't have a lot of answers. I needed to play more counter spells, and that's not the way I wanted to play this deck. I wanted to be tapping out on my turn for my Life from the Loam actions. I didn't want to be perceived as a threat, but I needed a way to win. So what I decided to do is, since I was already using so many lands, I decided to use a Life from the Loam coupled with a Seismic Assault plan. So it's definitely for any nostalgia buffs, people who really like these kind of quirky strategies that exist in the Eternal formats. This deck is a way to do that together, and you know, it has some consistency through its tutors and its dredging and draw filter. You're going to see a lot of the same cards in every game, but it's going to play a lot differently. It's more reactionary to the board state, and you're just trying to stall the game out into the point where you can either win or whittle down your opponents and kind of play a stack C element of the deck while you assemble this. So as a side note, there are 3 elementals that I've added to this deck to give a little bit extra value off of his ability, because there are some worthwhile cards playing. So the mana base, there's 39 lands. I have 10 basics. I have 1 plains, 3 islands, 3 swamps, 3 forests, and I'm not running any mountains. The reason I'm not running a mountain is because I don't have a fetch land that can get red. With the reprinting of the Onslaught fetches, I really would love to get a Wooded Foothills in this deck. I have a Marsh Flats right now, but you know, as it is, I'll have to wait until the set's released. But it's fine. I do need the plains is in there though for Knight of the Reliquary trigger, as you can sack plains. So I have 3, you know, produce any color land. I have Command Tower, Reflecting Pool, and City of Brass. Then I have the shocks. I have Watery Grave, Hallowed Fountain, Overgrown Tomb, Sacred Foundry, Breeding Pool, Stomping Ground, Godless Shrine. Then I am running 3 fetches. Now the reason I'm only running 3 fetches in this deck is because you're going to see a lot of these land cards over and over again, and you need the shocks to fix your mana. The mana base in this deck is arguably pretty shaky because you're playing a lot of utility lands. So the fetches are there to get your lands out, but you don't need to naturally draw a lot of fetch lands because you're going to be recycling them with Crucible of Worlds or Life from the Loam. So really what you want to be doing is using the same fetch lands and tutoring them up as opposed to having a lot of them. So I have Misty Rainforest, Verdant Catacombs, and Marsh Flats, and like I said, this would ideally be a Wooded Foothills. So this is Sunken Ruins. These are the filter lands, Flooded Grove, and Twilight Mire. And I only run the bug ones because that's what I predominantly need. I've been contemplating running Firelit Thicket just to give me the extra red because Seismic Assault's 3 red mana cost. So I might run that over Twilight Mire as I don't really need the black that much. Or Sunken Ruins. Both are probably the weaker of the 3. Then I'm running this one Boros Garrison, and maybe this should be the Firelit Thicket, but I really like the fact that it's the one crew land I have. It's nice, it has good synergy with Azusa, Oracle Moldiah. It's really powerful, and it gives me access to my land colors, but it has good synergy to the deck, and I like it. Then there's the two cycling lands that I run are Barren Moor and Tranquil Thicket, and if anyone's played the land deck, you understand like how powerful these cards can be. You're able to rebuy them with Life from the Loam and trigger the Dredge. So usually what I do is I kind of save these cards up in my hand when I have the availability to, because people tend to target Life from the Loam out of my graveyard, try to exile it. With this, you can save it. You can, when they target the Life from the Loam or your graveyard, you can cycle this card, get the Dredge trigger off of it, and put Life from the Loam back into your hand. And even if they exile your graveyard, you're still left with the card. If not, you can even use this throughout your turn. It would kind of read 3 mana, 1 and 2 green, and it's dredge 3, and get 3 lands from your graveyard back to your hand, and you can do that on repeat. So these cards are really nice. Then I'm running Urborg plus Cabal Coffers, generates a lot of mana. Urborg also has some synergy with the card Filth I run, which is if it's in your graveyard, all creatures have Swamp Walk, and since all lands are swamps in addition to their other type, Filth can help me get in with a creature. And since this deck isn't terribly creature-centric, it's just nice to be able to get in there with one of my huge guys, unblockable. Mazavith is pretty essential to this deck. You just need, since this deck, like I said, is not very creature heavy, it needs ways to interact with the board, and Mazavith just protects you. It's really nice. Glacial Chasm. This card, if anyone doesn't know, you have to pay 2 life as a cumulative upkeep, so that means that each upkeep is 2, 4, 6, and so on and so forth. But then when it enters the battlefield, you also have to sack a land. But creatures you control can attack and prevent all damage that will be dealt to you. This card is really good for the fact that you can choose to pay the cumulative upkeep. So I usually let this go 1 or 2 turns after the fact, pay a couple life, and then I'll sack it, build my mana base back up, get it back with Life from the Loam or Crucible of Worlds, and keep a lockdown where people can't damage me. Keep in mind that you can lose life, so Exsanguinates can kill, and so on and so forth, and poison, of course. But this card is really good at dodging a large chunk of the format, just keeping yourself alive until you can assemble, the cards you need to win, or let other opponents die and kind of duke it out after that. Strip Mine here, like I said, there's a recursion element, so you have to be very careful with Strip Mine because Strip Mine can be seen as a really mean card. I use it just basically to destroy other utility lands that are going to be powerful. Someone else is running Urborg, Cabal Coffers, I'm going to try to destroy that, nip it in the bud, not use as a mana base hate. As you see, it's the only destroy land card I have. Bojuka Bog, just the best graveyard hate. You can really use it with Karoo lands, a sack, with Glacial Chasm, or just things going to the graveyard naturally. This card's really powerful. Riftstone Portal, this card is not played that much, but it's excellent in this deck. Add 1 colors to your mana pool, but if it's in your graveyard, all your lands have tap to add 1 green or white to your mana pool. So obviously you can see this gives added reach, for example, to a blue-red land. This card would be tapped to add almost everything in this deck minus the black. And with Urborg out, you would basically have, a command tower. So it's sweet. Cephalid Coliseum, this is a great engine. The threshold activation is going to cost you your land drop and the land itself, but you're drawing 3, discarding 3, and it's uncounterable. It's just going to dig you through your deck if you need it, and on top of that, it can trigger Dredge. So imagine you've got the Golgari Grave Troll and the Life from the Loam in your deck. This is going to draw you 1 card, Dredge 9, and discard 3, which is going to put the Golgari Grave Troll at bare minimum, if you want to cast a Loam again, into your graveyard. It's just going to dig you really, really deep, and you can keep reusing it with Life from the Loam, Crucible Worlds. It's a great card. Volrath Stronghold just gives you extra utility creatures back on the top of your library. You can save targeted removal too from exiling, just like the Cycle lands. And then finally, Alchemist Refuge just gives me a little more utility, can play stuff with Flash, but like I said, I usually tap out on my turns, leave up a little bit of mana for counter magic. This definitely makes me have the option to play a little differently, and I totally would, especially if I'm going to deploy a threat. But this card is just in there for, a little bit later in the game. Okay, so like I said, there's Seismic Assault. So the way this card works is that you can, for each land card that you discard, you can deal 2 damage to target creature or player. I have this Land's Edge, which is the same, except it's an enchant world and any player can activate it. So you have to be careful. Your enemies can gang up on you, kind of destroy your creatures and deal some damage to you. But these cards are by and large going to work out better for you. And then on top of that is this guy here. He's got the same deal. but for 3 damage. And whenever he attacks, you can basically mill the top 3 cards, except all the land cards go to your hand. So between these 3 guys, oh, and you know he's pretty expensive, but you have reanimation effects, and this guy's probably gonna be in the graveyard. So between these 3, you're gonna be able to deal damage with your lands cards. And if anyone knows the combo from Extended and other Legacy, I guess, is Swans of Bernargle. Whenever you deal damage, it's prevented, and the source's controller of the damage you prevented draws that many cards. So you can deal 2 or 3 damage to this, draw that many cards, cycle through your deck, essentially until you're able to amass the cards. Now, you're not going to be able to chain down everybody in a multiplayer scenario, but this card, Creeping Renaissance, really gives you that extra reach. So you choose a permanent type, return all cards of the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand. So you're going to name land with this card every time, and the fact that it has flashback, and there's a lot of ways to rebuy in this deck, you're going to be able to get all those lands, all 39 or 30 or however many you have, and be able to disperse that damage as you please multiple times. So this could take down an entire table, but you definitely don't want to play it that way. You want to let the game go kind of long. You want to let the other people duke it out, get low life totals, and then be able just to kind of chain down everybody, or you know, leave a 1v1 situation or like 3-player situation where you're just going to have the power of your Seismic Assaults are going to be way more impactful, and this card will just help you end it. So here's the tutors: is Entomb, Mystical Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, Crop Rotation. Crop Rotation's really nice. You can surprise people by having a Glacial Chasm come right into play and prevent damage, and Insurrection kind of gets countered by this card. Demonic Tutor. Survival of the Fittest, it's not the best in this deck, but it does everything the deck needs with the creatures. It's discarding them, it's activating your Dredge on Golgari Grave Troll. You can also tutor up the Knight of the Reliquary if you need to dig for other lands, a Sun Titan to get back your enchantments. He does a lot. Buried Alive, just getting the 3 cards, enabling my Dredge, enabling other things. Knight of the Reliquary, as I've said before, just a great tutor card. It also is a beater later in the game. Really love this card, one of the reasons I play this deck. Mystical Teachings, really nice that it has flashback. It's definitely subpar as the other tutors are concerned, but the added utility that you can cast this from your graveyard can just give you that win when you otherwise wouldn't have it or get kind of stuck. Intuition, and you're searching for 3 different cards because you can't search for the same card because you can only have one in the deck. So it's definitely less powerful than in Legacy, where this is pretty much a 3-mana demonic tutor. But this card is what I want to be casting on turn 3 nearly every game if I can. I'm searching out Life from the Loam and 2 lands. I'm searching out Life from the Loam, Golgari Grave Troll, and a land, a fetch land. So I can keep reusing this, building up my mana base slowly turn by turn. It's not ramping me, but it's definitely giving me the cards in my graveyard that I need. It's giving me the lands in play that I want, and it's going to lead towards later game having potential. The later I cast this, the later that I get my Life from the Loam and lands in my graveyard, the slower it goes. And this deck can be really slow. So the tutors are essential to getting this out, and this is by far the best tutor in the deck. Realms Uncharted is like Gifts Ungiven, but for lands. You get 4 different lands with 4 lands with different names. Then you're gonna have an opponent that's gonna give you 2 are gonna go into your graveyard. Essentially, you're gonna get all the cards. It's draw 4 for 3. Can't beat that. Windfall, just cycling cards, ways to get cards in the graveyard, and obviously this has a little added element of disruption. Then there's Frantic Search. Free spells are great. Draw 2, discard 2. It's cycling through the cards. You're going to be able to re-enable your Dredge, and it just digs you a little deeper. It's not the most powerful, but it gets you there. Thirst for Knowledge, similar. You draw 3, discard 2, unless you discard an artifact. There's not many artifacts in this deck, but you want the cards in your graveyard. Attunement. This card is really cool. 3-mana enchantment, and then it says return it to your hand, draw 3, and discard 4 cards. So this card is slow, grindy, but it's reusable. It's not like a Thirst for Knowledge one-time shot. You're able to cycle through your deck. This card is slow, like I said, but one of my favorites. Factor Fiction, everybody knows how this works. You're going to get basically 5 cards for 4 mana. Read the Runes. This card is really weird. Okay, so it's X and a blue instant. Draw X cards. For each card drawn this way, discard a card from your hand unless you sacrifice a permanent. So basically this is, X and a blue, cycle through X cards. It's doing what Frantic Search does, but at the X level. So this is kind of the Sphinx's Revelation, you know, do the big draw spell in this deck, because you can, you know, cast this at instant speed, even though it's not that powerful, since you're having to discard the cards anyways. But it's really nice, digs you through a lot of stuff, and maybe can assemble stuff. I like seeing this card mid-game. Hermit Druid, obviously powerful. You know, people argue that it's broken. This deck has 9 basics, or no, 10 basics. So this card is not assembled to be a combo card specifically with this deck, but it's very good, and I never hesitate to play it. Obviously, the quintessential Life from the Loam. What can be said about this card that hasn't been said? It's probably my favorite Magic card. It just does so much, and lands are my favorite permanent type, so it's really fun. Golgari Grave Troll, as you said, Dredge Enabler 6 is huge. Mana Bond, this card is played in the Legacy deck, and it's really powerful but really risky. Early game, this might not be your best friend, but definitely in mid-game you want to be playing this. So it's a 1-mana enchantment, and it's during your discard phase. You may choose to put all land cards from your hand into play. If you do, discard the rest of your hand. So, like I said, cards are way more powerful in your graveyard in this deck. However, there are some things that you want to keep. The nice thing is it is a choice, so you don't have to do it. But it definitely can accelerate you. It's a risky turn 1 play, but it could put you ahead and could start getting you in the thing. But remember, you don't want to be the first place, because this deck needs time. So I really like seeing this late game when my hand is already depleted and I'm just drawing lands with Life from the Loam. I'm basically getting 3 lands a turn. It's really nice. Countryside Crusher. So this guy's super fun. If anyone played him back in Lorwyn block, like, he's obviously really powerful. In this deck, you know, the +1/+1 counters from the lands that you put onto them, making him huge, aren't that big of a deal. But like I said, you know, it's good that my creatures in this deck do have the potential to beat down. So the way it works, at the beginning of upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you put it into your graveyard, and then you repeat. So he's going to mill all the land cards every upkeep, and you're going to draw, but you know, by default, a non-land card. So he's giving you the gas you want in your hand, or a dredge trigger, plus all the lands that you want in your graveyard. So he's milling you, he's putting the relevant card in your hand, and he's getting bigger himself. So just a really fun card. Now I'm moving on to the 3 retrace cards I have. So the retrace mechanic is that you can cast the card from your graveyard, but the additional cost is that you have to discard a land. So you have to have a land in your hand, but Life from the Loam facilitates it really great. So these cards are just basically like flashback, but for free. Or sorry, they're not exiled. So this one is target player discards a card for 1 black. Now this plus Cabal Coffers Urborg is definitely going to be a nuisance for your opponents, and you really have to be careful. You don't want to play this card against everybody on the table. What I like to do with this is when the blue player taps out, you know, the kid who always has 7 cards in his hand, just wipe his hand out. And no one likes to have that happen, but blue's going to have ways to draw, and it's going to be great for the board. People are going to respect it and be like, okay, I see why he did that. That was like a good play for the board. But like Strip Mine, you know, you've got power, and with that power you're going to have to make good choices, or otherwise you're just going to get blown up. But this card can be really powerful. Then Worm Harvest, this card is probably my favorite retrace. So 5, 3 hybrid, green, black, 2 is sorcery, put 1/1 black and green worm creature token into play for each land card in your graveyard. You know, with that, the retrace is going to trigger a new creature token for each land, right? Because every time you're retracing, you're going to add 1 land, and if you're dredging, it's going to be huge. So each turn, if you're able to make, you know, a minor army of these black and green worm tokens, it's a way to win. You know, a 1-card win condition that's outside of the Seismic Assault, and it's definitely the funniest way to win. Spitting Image, right? It's the clone. Put a token that's into play that's a copy of target creature, and you can keep doing this, so you know, getting your opponent's best creatures or your creatures or whatever. Just really good utility. Definitely can be a win condition. You know, obviously clones are super powerful in EDH, but you know, the retrace just makes this nuts. So here's the card Filth I was talking about. Obviously you want them in your graveyard. Just gives all your creatures Swamp Walk, and then with Urborg you can, you know, unblockable. It's nuts. Genesis, he's, you know, just good 3 mana at your upkeep to get a creature back. He's kind of like Volrath Stronghold, except you have to pay it at your upkeep. He's honestly not that great as far as this deck's concerned, because I don't want to keep rebuying the same creatures a lot. But he's great when Azusa dies, or Oracle will die, and you need to get your lands out. Kidork Leviathan, just an emergency reset button. You definitely need some answers. You need some ways to, you know, get out of sticky situations, and this guy definitely can do it. And then here's my reanimation package. So just, you know, the namesake, reanimate, animate dead, and necromancy. Obviously necromancy, being able to cast an instant speed, can do some funny shenanigans. You know, getting that Sun Titan back to bring the Glacial Chasm once again, get your opponent out of nowhere, bait them into a huge attack. Oversold Cemetery, this gives me a lot of value. I actually like this better than in a lot of the graveyard decks that are just kind of eking out value every turn. This is just really nice because it's going to be able to give me things that I'm discarding back from my hand too. So it gives me ways to, you know, get through the stuff I'm milling. So if I'm milling over great creatures, this is going to be able to put them right into my hand and not have to worry about the fact that I milled them. Obviously if this card gets milled, oh well, I can play it if I want. It's kind of slow though. Burial Rites, great reanimation. Just having the flashback is super nice. Obsidat's Aid, you know, a lot of this deck runs off enchantments and non-creature permanents, so this is just a really great card. Snapcaster Mage, you know, just getting extra utility out of the spells that you're milling over. The 2/1 body can be relevant sometimes too, and I mean, you know, who needs to talk about Snapcaster Mage all that much? Regrowth, just getting a card back. It's just doubling the effect of any powerful card that you already have in the deck. Eternal Witness, regrowth on a creature, really good, everyone knows. Down and Dirty, just strictly better than regrowth, and I was running regrowth, so the fact that you can fuse these or just be able to cast down is sometimes relevant. I've cast it before, you know, someone tutors up a card, they only have 2 cards in hand, you get them with the discard. But generally you're going to be casting Dirty and just doing a regrowth. Sun Titan, like I mentioned a couple times before, he's just, you know, able to get those non-land permanents back from your graveyard, and that's what this deck needs. Burgeoning. So the way this works is that whenever an opponent plays a land, you can choose a land card from your hand and put it into play. Really good early game. But remember, you don't want to accelerate too much and get a target painted on your... my favorite way to use this card is mid-late game when you've already life from the loan and those are the cards in your hand, and then you just are getting them into play. It's kind of like an Azusa, which we'll see here in a second. Crucible of Worlds, one of my favorite Magic cards. Just land cards from the graveyard, obviously super powerful, and it's just super fun. Every time I cast this card, I'm enjoying myself. Azusa, Lost But Seeking. You know, she's just a super powerful early game engine to this deck. You need to be able to cast multiple lands or put multiple lands into play because she it's the 2 of them. She's my preferred one, but she's an easy target in this deck, and everyone who's played against me definitely knows that this card needs to be answered quickly before I get a lot of value off of it. Oracle Moldai does the same thing, a little bit more value-centric considering you can play off the top of your library, but it doesn't come up as important as in other decks. And I actually prefer Oracle Moldaya in, you know, a standard non-graveyard based deck like this one because she just gives you more value, and Azusa is just, you know, more about strictly ramping. And just to answer one question, I'm not playing Exploration for 2 reasons. 1, I don't have one. And 2, I honestly think that the fact that Azusa and Oracle Moldai are creatures just is better in this deck. Sure, they're easier to answer, but I can recur them easier too. Timbermare, getting into the 3 elementals in the deck. So this card is super quirky. I love this guy. So he's 4 mana haste, 5/5, and he has Echo. And so this is the green Thundermare, if anyone remembers Thundermare, the red creature. So when it comes into play, tap all other creatures. So this is really better than Thundermare because of the Echo. So you're going to be able to instantly sacrifice him and getting the added value of bringing him back with Horde Notions. This guy is a makeshift fog. So if you're able to bring him back at instant speed, you know, it's just one of those, I get you, you can't attack with your creatures, I get this really weird effect. And he is, like, the original intention of this card is just to make him pseudo-unblockable for a turn, right? All the other creatures come in play are tapped, and you can get in for 5, and sometimes it's enough. Sometimes you play this guy, and you already have a huge beater out, and then you just win with these guys combined. But the Horde Notion synergy is definitely the reason I'm playing this. Revelark, right? Probably the best elemental for what this deck is trying to do, just regrowing those guys, you know, combos with Eternal Witness, with Azusa, with Knight of the Reliquary. It's just really great. So you really want to have this guy evoked. Honestly, it's just a little bit hard for you to get cards into your graveyard from play. So evoking this guy is really great, and the synergy with Horde Notions is just really nice. And then Rubble Hulk. He's an elemental, and his power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, so he's probably going to be pretty big. But his Blood Rush ability is why I'm playing him. So for one green and a red, you can discard him, and target attacking creature gets +X/+X, where it's the number of lands you control. So he's a beater. He gives me, you know, the extra reach, like we're talking about, is just so nice. But the fact that I can Blood Rush him and bring him back, or just recycle him to Blood Rush him again, makes the worst creature you have into a really good creature, and the combat trick element of it is just so nice because it can blindside people, and you can kill somebody out of nowhere. Getting into the fogs, I have 2 fogs besides the Timber Mirror, which you could argue is a fog in this deck, and this one's Moment Peace, so this is the flashback one. Really good, obviously. You mill over it, you still have a fog in your graveyard, and sometimes people really don't pay attention to even the given information, especially because you're milling like 40 cards. You know, people aren't going to know every single card in your graveyard unless they're paying attention, and this card can really get people, and fogs are just super powerful, especially in a deck like this one that's kind of stacksy. And then Constant Mist. So this one's the buyback, sack a land one. So as we were talking about before, sacking lands in this deck isn't even a bad thing. The thing is, it doesn't progress your board, so that's why Zeus is so important. But just being able to buy back a fog is super powerful. And obviously, if you mill over it, it's not so good, but it's a really nice card. Then I have a counterspell, Arcane Denial. I just think this is the most flexible. It's the easiest on my mana base, and it's just a good card. It's countering a spell. Then Memory's Journey. This card is just a little bit of utility. You can save your own stuff. You can, you know, get rid of someone's graveyard if they have, but the problem is the player shuffles, so it's his or her choice. Better on yourself, but the flashback on it is really nice. Being able to mill over this and kind of save your important stuff is why it's in here. Beast Within, you know, just an answer. It's probably one of the weaker cards in the deck, considering you have to naturally draw it, or, you know, cast it with Snapcaster Mage Regrowth. But, you know, you just need an answer, and this one covers pretty much everything. Damnation here, just creatures strategies are probably going to beat us every time. We need ways to destroy them, so we have Damnation. It's the most efficient, and then Decree of Pain. It's just like a favorite. The cycling not being counterable is really, really good. Then I have the Elixir of Immortality. Now this deck doesn't care so much about rebuying cards and making this like a big chain with elixirs, but I really think that it's good to have this effect as far as it gives you a little bit of life gain, and being able to shuffle all these cards and save yourself just is invaluable when it needs to be there. And then the last card we have here is Sylvan Library, and I left the ones at the end, kind of the weird cards. This card just is super powerful, and if you can get it early, it just, the dredge triggers, the way it works is that it says draw 2 cards, so you can replace one of those with a dredge trigger, and then you can still get the other cards in your hand for free. So it's essentially a free dredge trigger, or 2 free dredge triggers if you want, which is just nuts. You still get the effect, and then it's replaced with dredge. So it has to go in this deck, even though, you know, it's not that exciting a card. So just a few closing thoughts on the deck itself. It's really, you want to pick this deck up when you're at a table and you don't know the decks, when you want to have fun yourself, because you're going to be spending a lot of your turns doing your own thing. You're not going to interact with the board, and you really want to be having fun with yourself, with your own deck, and then trying to respond to the decks on the battlefield alongside you in a more neutral way. You know, Glacial Chasm, don't attack me. It's not a rattlesnake, it's just saying it's pointless. But it's really easily hated on. Graveyard Hate destroys this deck hard. So, you know, pick it if you're going with a meta that isn't playing a ton of that, or doesn't really mind you doing what you're doing. It's not inherently the most powerful strategy. It's not explosive by any means, but for me, it's really fun because I get to play a lot of the cards that I've liked over the years, and powerful synergies that all kind of came together in this one deck. So I hope you enjoyed it, and take it easy. Thanks for watching CMDR Decks. If you guys could give it a quick like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching.